You are listening to Claret Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Lorry.
Welcome back to Claret Blue. We're here at the Melting Pot in Digbeth, very close, admittedly, to the Blues ground. Right?
Yeah, that's why we've got all the doors and windows closed, isn't it?
But yeah, we're here with Rob Warner and we're here to talk, we'll talk a bit of kit really, Rob. But you've got to explain who you are. You're not just a Villa fan. And actually, if you don't know who Rob is, there's a bit of a story, isn't there, Rob?
There is a little bit. So yeah, my background was originally studying fashion design, but always had a slant on football, and even one of my projects when I was at university was we were given freedom to design anything we wanted, and I designed a load of Reebok Villa kits. This was back in the late 90s. Got ripped apart in front of my lecturer, being told that's not fashion, sportswear's not fashion, it's not what you should be doing. But it turned out it was what I should be doing. So I, after graduating, went to work for Puma out in Germany, spent 6 years designing football kits for them, ultimately overseeing all of the performance sport categories for Puma. So some of the big hits whilst I was there was working on Cameroon for the World Cup and the Africa Cup of Nations. I designed all of Puma's kits that were worn at the 2006 World Cup, including Italy, who won the tournament. I designed Usain Bolt's kit and all the Jamaican team for the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. And then after I left there, I went to Umbro, where I was eventually creative director over all the products for the brand. So I arrived just after they'd started the Tailored by Umbro part of the business, but helped to grow that. So it was my team that designed the famous Aguero-moment shirt. We did England kits with Peter Saville and launched on Kasabian and all that sort of thing. And then my last professional designs were worn by Everton in the 2014-15 season.
Fashion to me always ties into football. You saw kind of like the casual stuff on the terraces and how you have loads of Twitter accounts, casual culture. You have Adidas, people who just don't stop wearing Sambas and are taking photos of them. But also like Arsenal releasing football inspired clothing, like and you got Villa of course with with the look, I think it's a Dapper villain or something. You got it all bleeds in. So you've been told that's not fashion, almost like the foresight of how that developed.
Well, I think as well, at the time that I was at university, and part of what prompted me to want to study fashion was the era when David Beckham was really breaking through, and that crossover, and it was just after the Spice Boys at Liverpool, and that crossover of like really blurring the lines, and sport inspired fashion was really starting to take off. So Prada Sport was launched as well at that time, and it just took proper sportswear but put it into the fashion arena. So I think that's always influenced the work that I've done, is looking at what does an athlete need, what are the real technical qualities that the product needs to have, and then how can you infuse that with something that looks and feels stylish with it. So
before we kind of taught the Villa stuff, we've actually got more than a few kind of your samples. Yeah. And the one that kind of grabs my eye is, of course, the Cameroon number.
The sleeveless one was that was designed just before I arrived at Puma, and my first job as a professional designer was trying to figure out how to put sleeves on something that wasn't supposed to have sleeves. So because obviously it was banned at the Africa Cup of Nations, we had to figure it out quickly for the World Cup. So we worked kind of day and night trying to figure out how to integrate these black mesh sleeves that would not really show up against the player's biceps. And so the guys ended up wearing that, so at the tournament it kind of looked like the tournament badges and stuff with tattoos on their biceps. But yeah, it was a bit of a challenge of having something banned and needing to fix it, but wasn't the first time or wasn't the last time that we did something that got banned as well for Cameroon.
What was the general purpose behind the lack of sleeves?
I think back to say this was launched in early 2002. And if you think back to what football shirts were generally like then, they were big. Yeah, and there was a big issue around shirt pulling at the time, and it was like a real hot topic within football and within the performance part of football, where players were getting their shirts pulled, and it was obviously it was a foul, but it was something that we wanted to try and eradicate. With Cameroon, we were able to put them in something that was really tight fitting, and then the rules didn't say that it had to have sleeves until we did a shirt with no sleeves. We were fortunate that Cameroon had a pretty small pool of players to choose from, so we pretty much knew who was going to be wearing it. So we kind of knew that this would show up looking good on those players, but also it would give them that performance advantage. If you think of that sort of era, you'd got Samuel Eto'o was starting to break through. They'd got Patrick Mboma, who played, I think, for Sheffield United for a little while. Actually, when they were away travelling to different matches, Mboma used to get his sketchbook out and his pencils and design kits and get the marketing team to bring them back to us in the office in Germany of things that he liked. But he did one year, and it had got all buttons down the front of it, which we didn't think would perhaps work as a football shirt. But yeah, so it was all about the performance advantage of it, really. And then I guess the next Cameroon shirt that you've got over there with the red shorts attached to it. So this was the next thing we did that wasn't against the rules until we did it, which was the all-in-one kit. So another one that was quite famous and famously got banned. So, again, they're just really thinking about, from an athletic need, what do the players need? So we made it super tight. We had to think about the psychology of the players. So aside from the function of it, we also wanted to think about the actual storytelling. So because it was about shirt pulling, it was the idea of, what if they were attacked by a lion, with them being the lions. So the ventilation on the side, we made cuts in it and left it raw edge, so it looks almost as if the lion's claws have been into it. The flock on here is a little bit taller and longer than you would find on, say, the two examples that we've got here, so it feels a little bit more furry. And then this one doesn't have the typeface on the back, but if you were to look this up, the typeface looked really raw and inspired by Africa and being out in the bush, etc., with the lions around. And the typeface was drafted off a pre-existing one, and I did the graphic work on it actually at Villa Park. I've been good friends with Thomas Hitzelsperger for a number of years, way back to when he was playing in the Villa reserves, and he was playing in a reserve game whilst I was over in Birmingham, and went and sat in the box watching him play, but with my laptop and working on this typeface. Well, I forget who they were playing against, but so yeah, the typeface for the back of the Cameroon all-in-one kit was designed in Villa Park.
It's interesting to see, because I think opinions may be divided, especially about the second kit, but it's like you faced there's challenges that we as fans don't see in the kit design process, and I guess Cameroon fans aren't probably dissecting it as much as, as an England fan, you don't dissect the international shirt probably as much as you do with your club shirt. If you're an Arsenal England supporter, you're more focused on that Arsenal shirt, like with the Villa stuff. But it's interesting to see how much challenges for those three shirts you faced. But I wanted to speak about the prestige as well, because I think we've got one there hidden under all the Villa pile that we need to speak about before we get into things. Italia, Puma. There can only be one reason this was made, right? What's this all about?
So this one is super rare. You'll see in the back it says 96 hours, Neil Barrett for Puma, which is Neil Barrett was actually the guy who set up Prada Sport on behalf of Prada. So he'd been a massive influence on my career, and then we brought him into work on some fashion product for the brand. But then when we signed Italy, we got him involved in the Italy project. So the intention with this one was that it was very much a fashion product. So it was only sold in like the top 40 or 50 Puma fashion retailers around the world, the ones that were getting the Jill Sander and Philip Stark type product, Alexander McQueen. And it was done as the first ever third shirt for the Italian national team. So you can see the glisten on it, and just inside it's got silver fibre, so it is antibacterial and antimicrobial, so you could wear it all day or all night and it wouldn't smell. It kills the bacteria that creates odour. Jacquarded into the sleeve, which jacquard is a word that basically means where you knit a pattern in, so something that was super popular in Villa kits across the 80s and 90s. So you can see the Italia wording that's knitted into the sleeve there. So I mean, this retailed at like £150, £200. straight away, and it was limited edition, so there were more created for the players than actually went on sale. And they wore it for Marcello Lippi's first game in charge of Italy, which was away in Iceland. And the Italians are so superstitious, they actually lost the game in this shirt and vowed that they would never wear it again. And they would never wear it again, and they didn't wear it again. And so, yeah, I've only ever seen kind of one more of these anywhere, and that's some guy based out in Hong Kong who collects Italy shirts, has got it on his website.
We obviously have to talk about the World Cup win 2006. Infamous for a number of reasons in the final, the old headbutt there, the old words between Italy and France. But you obviously designed, well, I'll say obviously, it's obvious to me because we spoke about it so many times. You designed those kits, and if I remember correctly, you crowbarred Villa into that somehow? Yeah,
I did. Well, it wasn't so much crowbarred, it was a natural fit.
That's what he's saying.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at the footage from the tournament, one of the 3 goalkeeper shirts that we did for Gigi Buffon was in albeit with navy, but it was in a deep claret colour. And then the coaching staff, so Marcello Lippi and his team, their colour palette was pretty much what you're wearing. So like the deep claret white, and then it had got navy blue with it. So I found some tenuous link back in Italian history to present it as like, oh, it's you know, some sort of royal colour, and that's why the staff should wear it and not the players and whatever else. But in reality, it was just purely because it was Villa colours, and I wanted to see Villa at the World Cup. But we haven't got the shirts with us because the ones I've got are currently in massive frames at home.
Rightly so.
Yeah. There was kind of 2 different facets to it. The first was we wanted to create a football shirt that would be the fastest shirt on earth. So we got the brief of get players to the ball faster, and that was right across all of our national teams for the World Cup. And so naturally then we would end up with a template, and people don't like templates because it's deemed lazy and whatever, but for us it was like, well, if this is the right performance solution, then it's the right performance solution. And so we then had to figure out how can we make each one feel unique for each nation if it's essentially the same shirt. So for the Italian team, the home shirt was in the blue, and then it got kind of the navy gradient around the arms and on the sides of the shorts. And the away shirt was a slight variation on the performance theme, in that we also incorporated a bit of a deep V-neck over the top of the collar. And so the idea with the Italian national team was that they're superheroes. So the home kit was like their superhero outfit, and the navy blurring was to give the impression of like when you see a superhero moving at speed in a comic, the colour comes off them and bleeds into the background. So we wanted to replicate that. And then the away kit was like the Clark Kent. So if you look at it carefully, you'll see that it looks like the collar of the home shirt is being worn just underneath a white t-shirt. So yeah, I mean, we did all the testing and stuff in the labs on it, and figured out the performance features, and you know, I don't know whether that's why Italy won the World Cup, but it was proven that it did the job that we wanted it to.
With the shirts, obviously the Kappa stuff we've got over the years, it's a brand that's probably come into a lot, not a controversy, but questioning over the sizes. We've got, I think, 2 larges there, and they fit medium, if not you know, small for some people. So can you explain kind of what the kind of concept of a shirt size is when it comes to football? Because people buy the shirt size they might fit for a shirt, and I'm wearing a t-shirt here. I've got a Nike one at home. They're both the same size. One of them's massive, one of them's small. I guess it varies from brand to brand, but obviously with a football kit, there's a lot more risk attached to buying your own size.
Well, there's kind of 3 elements to it that we would talk about in the industry, and not just within sports, where you have size, fit, and grading. So the size is, if we make a large, it's X, you know, so most people would say, I know that I'm a large or a medium or whatever size you are. And then the fit is where the brand has decided that if you're a large, this is what we want that to look like on you. Obviously they call it Pro Combat, but it's essentially body fit. And then you'll have heard slim fit, loose fit, same as when you buy jeans.
These would be the stadium, so if you had a Pro, that's a whole different...
Even tighter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you would have, same as when you buy jeans, regular fit, loose fit, slim fit, whatever it might be. And so it's the same approach to that, and Kappa have always done that. And then the grading is the difference between each size, because to go from a small to a medium to a large, it's not just where you add on a bit of size all the way around it. Some areas need more size adding on than others. And so I think in terms of Kappa kitting out professional footballers, I think it's fine. Where the challenge comes up is, are they really fit for purpose when they're kitting out fans? So from Kappa's point of view, they're going to be happy with the way that looks on athletes, and rightly so. I think, you know, they've set their stall out for over 20 years now that they're the brand that makes body fit football shirts. I think where it becomes an issue is there's not enough of a difference, enough of a grading between their size large for an athlete and size large for a fan. They still try and keep it fairly close to saying, well, it's body fit on a player, so we'll make it skinny fit or slim fit on a fan. But it just doesn't work, especially on the bigger sizes. I think, you know, grading there could play a role, where a guy who's a small or a medium perhaps be quite happy wearing something that's a lot closer to his body. But once you start getting up into guys who are normally an L, XL, double XL, and not because they're Tyrone Mings, because, you know, they're ordinary people with that size body. So trying to keep the fit the same just doesn't translate across as well. And, you know, it's been a complaint of fans of Kappa teams for a long time, but, you know, for whatever reason, they've stuck with that.
What I would say about Kappa is I've particularly enjoyed wearing them in the 3 Premier League seasons because I've lost weight. So to go down from the large to the extra large to the large, it feels like it makes you feel like a massive achievement.
And was the Kappa shirts the inspiration for that?
Yeah, because I bought one and I couldn't fit in. I could, it's just really tight like a footballer's. But I guess it's really hard to make. Well, you're the expert, but if you've got so many different body shapes, to fit those into essentially your small, medium, large, extra large, it seems very difficult to fit thousands and thousands and thousands of different bodies.
Well, I think it kind of is, but also when you're looking at footballers, generally, even if they're a small and they take their shirt off, the makeup of their body is going to be fairly similar to a guy who's a lot bigger. You know, they're still going to be, you know, relatively similar. Whereas with us mere mortals, you know, a small guy might look relatively close to a small footballer, but an extra large guy is going to look very different than an extra large footballer. So that's where, as you go up through the sizes, you need to grade the stuff accordingly to make sure that it's taking into account those different body sizes and shapes.
Just before we dive into this big pile, what makes a good kit in general, and what makes a bad one in terms of the design, the performance, how it fits on a fan? There's a lot to consider. You know, you're making essentially 2 different shirts. So. Yeah,
well, I think a lot of it's subjective, to be honest. So if a team does well in a kit, or your favourite player wears it, or it's your first ever one, then that's kind of what makes it. And so there are certain things that you'd want to get right. And I think when I think through my favourite Villa shirts and least favourite Villa shirts, I kind of think, well, there's not many that were absolutely miles off. You know, they've generally been all right. I think you could make a pretty good argument that is all right good enough, should we as a club be striving for more. You know, so I think respecting the heritage, certainly for me, respecting the heritage of the club. If there's a way you can try and teach people something that perhaps they didn't know or they'd forgotten about, that shows that you've got that insight. So one of the Nike kits had black socks, which was something that we'd worn a long time ago as a club. And it was quite interesting to just bring that back and be like, oh, we did that.
Actually, because those black socks, there's a massive period of Villa's history where they wear them, and you don't assume that the Villa kit, the prototype Villa kit, claret shirt, white shorts, black socks, and you could argue that it probably is. It's bizarre.
Yeah, definitely. I think an area where perhaps the club's let itself down over the years is, and you can see some of it on the table here, but the different executions of the badges that we've got, not just, you know, we changed from the round one to the shield, and then the shield's changed, but even, you know, looking at the Reebok examples of how they've done that, of a shield within a shield, and it'd be difficult to use this. This is called an embroidered applique, so it's like an embroidery which is then edge stitched onto the shirt, which means you get fewer stitches coming through and rubbing your nipples off when you're playing football in it, or just wearing it to the pub. And trying to do that around this shape would be really difficult. So I would think that's probably why they ended up putting it within a shield, so that they could protect the integrity of the crest. But we've had so many slightly different variations on the crest. Yeah. We've got right across the table here so many different variations on.
Even the same decade, Rob. I mean, you've got the same, essentially the same badge. Yeah. 4 variations of a decade, and I know the modern era gets a lot of flack for how quickly things change. Yeah. Maybe not paying homage to, you know, the traditions enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 the same, obviously, because of the same era, but it's the same badge, it's the same design line, it's the same.
Well, wasn't this from the 90s as well? So you can have another one there. I was very vocal on Twitter, where I seem to have amassed a bit of a following of people who are generally into football shirts, and I was really vocal and critical about what Puma had done with the 3rd shirts this season, where they'd taken the crest off completely, and it was just the name, and I could see that they were trying to do something different, and there's something nice about that. But for me, the club crest should be the most important, most cherished aspect of any club. So if you were to ever see pictures of like the England team, when England first started playing international matches, you were given your badge and your cap, so you'd bring your own shirt. And so you'd see in the pictures that the guys some of them would be wearing things that were more like jumpers, others would have grandad collars. And so you pick for England and you turn up and you bring your own white shirt, and here's your badge and here's your cap. And you'd put your badge on your shirt. And so that's how precious it was. It was like you were awarded the badge. And yet now it goes on everything. And I know that clubs want to sell things and they want souvenirs and they want fans to get into it. But like you talk about, you walk into Villa Park on a match day, and you take your seat in the stands and you think, well, I want these players to die for the badge. I want them to go out there and give everything for the badge. And then hopefully they do, and hopefully we win. And then you come to leave and there's burger wrappers and serviettes and hot dog trays and whatever all over the floor in the concourse. And you're trampling all over the badge because they're all branded. And you're like, well, what is this worth? You know, we literally stick it on everything. How can we make it more prestigious? So as a club, not only have we gone the same route as everybody else with making it so valuable that we want to put it on everything, and now it's of no value and no consequence, but even to the other extreme, that we still just keep changing it all the time.
It's an interesting one with Villa specifically. I'm wary of getting into the weeds so much, but it applies so much to what we're going to talk about, is you have got so many different variations of the Aston Villa badge over generations. Yeah. For example, the Arsenal badge has changed. The Manchester United badge, the Man City one's definitely changed. But with Villa, you have so many changes per generation that it's really difficult to pin what is the Villa badge. Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously it's a line rampant, but you have the circle badge, the round badge, which people would die for. Yeah. You've got the 90s badges, which changed from kit to kit.
Yeah, every week.
You've got this one, which I think the rebrand done a few years ago, probably at the worst possible time, to be fair. But you've got now this one. When does this one change? I think as a Villa fan, you expect it to change so often. So what is the Villa badge for you? What makes it so Villa?
Even going on to the shirts themselves, the colours, what is claret, what is our blue. Yeah. And I think for me, all of it would need to come together in terms of a package of, well, what do we want to represent as a brand and as a club? And I know that a lot of people won't take too kindly to talking about a club as a brand, but it is really in the, like, working within our industry, there's a famous quote that a good brand is a promise and a great brand is a promise kept. So as Aston Villa, what's the promise? That if you come and play for us, or if you support us, or if we're representing where you're from or your family, what are we promising people? And even thinking about claret and blue, it's quite an old-fashioned colourway. It's very traditional King Edward's Aston school, and all that sort of thing that dates back a long, long time. But then you think of Villa Park and Aston Hall and the heritage around the club, the inventors of the Football League, or the notion of even the league format. And so we've got this amazing authenticity and history And it's like, well, how do we capture that into everything we do as a club? How do we stand up and say, you know, we are football, we're the original football club, which is what I'd do with it. You know, if I was put into Villa Park and they said, right, do what you want with how the brand looks, and if the right people are listening, I would definitely entertain that conversation. But how do we take ownership of something? So because we've had so many crests, you'd probably look at, well, what are the consistents? What do we want to pick out as being our claret, and how do we make sure that that shows up every time and reject where it doesn't show up properly? Oh, well, sorry, no, we're not going to accept that. It's not the right colour. I remember working with Spurs when they did their major rebrand ahead of the 2006-07 season, and they didn't just come out with a new badge. We were given the brand guidelines, and it was everything from the typeface that was used in the programme, what was used around the stadium, the colour of the crest when it was on a business card compared to when it was on Daniel Levy's business card, to when it was around the stadium. Everything was micromanaged to the extreme, and there's something quite nice about that. Even you could go as far as saying perhaps the shirt that the first team wear is different than all the other teams. So if you're playing for the men's or women's first team, this is the kit and this is the replica as well. But the youth teams perhaps they all wear the match day warm-up shirt or something instead to play in, so that you're fighting to be like, you can't just have a Villa shirt. You got to put the effort in. If you want to wear a first team Villa shirt, you better earn it. And the same goes for the badge. But as long as we're, as a club, not giving a toss about what the colours are, changing a badge every couple of years, sticking it all over burger wrappers, whatever, we just become another club, sadly.
So we've talked about your expertise and why you're qualified to rip these kits apart, highlight those ones. We got into the Villa kits, of course. You spoke a bit about what makes a good kit, what makes a bad kit, what makes a kit, what's the sizings. Let's go into Villa, and I think, Rob, the first thing to talk about is your favourite Villa shirt of all of them that we've got here. Which one kind of wins for you?
So for me, this one is my favourite Villa shirt, even though it's the least Villa shirt that we've got on the table. So I think if you think of what makes a Villa shirt, and it's a claret body, blue sleeves, yes, we've got the badge and the famous sponsor that a lot of us hold very dear because of the heritage of it. But for me, it's because this was my first Villa shirt, then it will always be precious to me. And I think a football shirt is a bit like a football stadium in that it's the memories that make it what it is. And I think that's part of the challenge when clubs move into a new stadium, is there's no history, there's no, I used to sit here with my dad and he sat here with his granddad, and that night against Inter Milan or the penalty shootout against Tranmere or any of those things. And the same thing goes into the football shirts. It's the history and what happens in them that makes them important. And I remember, for me as a kid, like for mum and dad to buy me a football shirt was a big deal because they were expensive then, just like they're expensive now. So I remember I had it for Christmas and just being so excited. But then in those days the life cycle of them was longer as well. So I think this was, I don't know if this was for a couple of years or not, but if you look back through the archives, there's a few shirts that we've had that lasted quite a while. So for me, it's absolutely not a typical Villa shirt. But just because of all the memories and heritage attached to it, that's what makes it my favourite. So as what I've said about it not being a Villa shirt is a stick I'm going to use to beat other Villa shirts on the table, because I haven't got the same memories attached to them.
I think we should go for a bad one then, right? If we're talking the highlight, the best one, you've got to talk about an awful one. I mean, you say awful, you picked this out as a bad one with this 2003 Diadora one.
Yeah.
For me, we spoke about the superhero, the Italy, the stripes, and I know this hasn't got your stripes or your shading, but I look at that, Juan Pablo Angel scored, and that is like rippling behind him, he's running down. But you did point out, before we recorded, because I did question it, because I love this shirt because it is essentially my childhood shirt. There is a lot wrong with what Diadora done with this shirt. I mean, the sponsor, Rover, the badge, Diadora, there's a fair bit going for it, but what's the problem? Well, I think from a fan's perspective and looking at it flat like this, then it's, to all intents and purposes, it's a proper
It's a proper Villa shirt. I think, you know, you could have the argument about whether a raglan sleeve is Villa, so that comes up here into the collar, or whether we're the club that should have a set-in sleeve and it's, you know, it's only this part that's blue. I think, you know, people get hung up on that a little bit. For me, it's more from a design perspective, where the fabric itself was, a lot of brands were doing a woven fabric at the time, and this wasn't an especially bad one. There wasn't anything especially different with it, but it just wasn't the same kind of woven fabric that the likes of Nike were using, and so it was a real sweat box to wear. The neck as well hasn't really got enough stretch in it.
Tell me about it. I've had to put my head through that a few times last season. I haven't worn it this season.
So yeah, anybody that's got, you know, decent sized pumpkin on the top of their neck, or a lot of hair, I think it would be a challenge. And well, Nike, I think, were the first ones to use a woven fabric instead of a knit in this era. And if you look at their shirts from like 2002, they'd got the contrast inserts and things like that, and that all gave a little bit more stretch around the collar, whereas this, you know, there's very little. I also think from a fan perspective, there's not really a lot of shirt for your money there. There's not a lot going on, which visually, you know, makes it quite nice. Of like, well, yeah, it's a Villa shirt, but yeah, it's not my least favourite shirt, but it's just kind of
it's a poorer one.
It's just a bit of a nothing shirt, really.
This is a medium. It's absolutely massive. Yeah. It fits XXL. It's humongous. So shirt pulling.
Yeah, it was fairly typical of that era that shirts were enormous. I mean, I still remember now Mark Kinsella running around, strolling around Villa Park, and just in this enormous thing. And my little lad's 3, and he looks like when he puts one of my t-shirts on. And Alan Wright was the same before him. So yeah, I don't know. It was just isn't good enough. I don't think, not for a club
the
like
conversation. Then with one that is good enough. This is a bit more than isn't it? I feel.
Yeah. So I've got a couple here. I mean, again, you could make the argument on this one. So this was mine from that era as well. I wasn't a large at that time, but I used to like wearing it over a couple of sweatshirts, so I didn't have to wear a coat over it in the winter. I mean, the blue is about as wrong can be, as far as claret and sky blue goes. It's almost a blues shirt. At least, you know, those elements of it are. I guess having this on the sleeve would preclude it from being a blue shirt most of the time. But you know, I think what I love about this was that it does speak back to the heritage. I think the circle around the collar was very much of the era. It was quite interesting that we were moving into this brave new future with Sky Sports and the Premier League, and yet Umbro did this thing that was, you know, from
1800s,
from the past.
Victorian.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of stuff still gets made about templates, and we talked about it when we went through my shirt designs. But I mean, this was a template as well. I think Ipswich Town had the same one, and you know, there was even, I think maybe Napoli or somebody had this as a third shirt as well, around the same sort of time. But what makes it unique is you've got this jacquard in the fabric. It's quite difficult to do for probably a club of our size now, because the factories want miles and miles of it as a minimum order, otherwise they just won't entertain it. So to get something like that on a shirt is quite unique now, unless you're a really, really big club, you know. And I know we like to think we are, but we don't sell millions of shirts.
Can I put in with a stupid question?
Yeah.
Jacquard.
Yeah. So a jacquard is what you can see on the fabric here. You can pick it up, and it's where usually a slightly different texture, whether in this case you've got kind of a dull and a shiny yarn. So the yarn is like what I guess most people would call threads, but the yarn is the elements that go through to be knitted to make up the fabric. And so the jacquard is a way that pattern is knitted in. So what you would tend to find mostly these days is that pattern would be printed over the top. So I think with the shirts behind us, that is a print on the home shirt. It could have been jacquarded in, it could have been knitted in, but instead they've printed it over the top. It's a lot cheaper and easier to execute, whereas this is where a fabric mill have actually worked with the brand to create a fabric that's unique to us.
Is that the same as this?
Yeah, same there. So I think back in the day, fabric minimums weren't the same as what they are now, so it was easier to do. But I mean, even whilst we're on this and talking about fabrics, I mean, if you feel that now, I mean, even back in the day, it was a horrible fabric. But if you imagine a football shirt being made out of this,
like curtains.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen any of the kit reviews that we've done on Twitter through Spark Design Academy, I mean, I've gone in with both feet on the Leeds home shirt this season because fabric perspective is dreadful. But you know, this is even worse than that.
And it's exactly the same fabric as the Man United replica, which I didn't like it on that. I don't like it on this. It's heavy, it snags on my fingers, makes my skin crawl.
Actually, there's a good line that comes up in your kit reviews, and it's about the badge, and the back of the badge. It's absolutely like nipple grater, right?
Yeah.
What we're saying about this one, it's
so this
just
one's
there,
all right. Yeah. So this one is what you'd call an applique. So that's where it's basically the stitching goes on around the edge, which minimises the amount of material, the amount of stitches that you've got on the inside, because they're really rough.
I think it's with the manufacturer logo is usually where it happens, right? So
yeah,
from the back of...
so that one's been heat applied.
Good.
So that's like a 3D filled thing. I'm not sure if we've got anything recently. Most of our stuff tends to not fall into that
Diadora one. He's got it again.
There we go.
It feels pretty soft, but I guess if that's rubbing up and down on a footballer job.
I think yes, you'd get some nipple rub off it, which is that's the official term for it.
Can you get a nipple rub rating out of 10?
That wouldn't be too bad because it's quite small, but I'd still give it, like with 10 being the worst, that's still an unhealthy 5. Whereas if the whole crest was done like that, then it causes a big issue. And having designed stuff for athletes for many years now, you know, you do stuff, even fabrics can cause it. So if you do a running t-shirt out of a material that's really rough, then you can test it on runners and they will literally come back with bloody nipples where it's worn it out. And so, you know, you do have to take those things into account. If you were going cross-country running, you might want this one just in case you get lost.
So this is the Lambert's Limes one, and it's a cult classic. Everyone hates it, but some people love it. So Big Benteke and that scoring a few.
I know, but it just sits here and it's honking like an angry goose. It's just horrible.
The sponsor's bad for one.
Yeah, the sponsor, the application of it. I know people
Dan
say...
said the badge looks fake as well.
Yeah, I mean, the badge execution's rubbish. I know people tend to dislike the idea of changing the colour of the badge, so like we've got on the away shirt there. But in this instance, it absolutely should have been a different colour. I mean, just the way it's put together, the cheap fabric, all of that. But, you know, if you cover up that badge, whose shirt is that? Is it even for an outfield player? Yeah, it's just...
a cycle shirt, isn't it? Like a jersey.
Garbage. I mean, Macron have done some really good work over the last few years, ironically, since we've stopped working with them. I think they've even changed the logo a little bit. Because, I mean, that does look like it's kind of some healthy weight loss initiative from Birmingham City Council. So just everything with it was just not good enough. So that one can very much get in the bin.
To me, this was when I kind of got into video games, LMA Manager, FIFA 2000, I think, and this was the shirt. Yeah. This was the visual Villa, because we didn't have Sky Sports, couldn't afford to go to games, so the only interaction I had with Villa was the newspaper and this, and this was a very Villa. I thought every Villa shirt would look like this. It's a one-off. It's an absolute, you know, you stay with the laces and the jacquard on the Umbro one. Probably won't see that again. I find it very hard to kind of even bring the idea that we'll ever see this one again.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this one, it's another one that, I mean, perhaps there wasn't so much attention put on kits then, like there is on everything now through social media, but I kind of remember it being quite popular at the time because it was different, and it helped that you had got the likes of Collymore and Carbone and Merson and who were wearing it. And I think it's another one that's going to fall into that category of, because of who wore it and when it was worn and what for, then people look back on it dewy-eyed. But if this hadn't been done before and Kappa had launched it this season as the home kit, there'd have been absolute uproar. And I think as a designer, having worked for loads of different teams and countries, I've never done the Villa kit, and it's one that I'd love to, but also I think I'd find really difficult, because it's one that if you don't change it enough, people complain that it's too much like last season's. But if you change it even 5% too much, then it's not a Villa shirt anymore. And it was the same when I was designing the England kit. It's so hard to get it right, which is why a lot of brands will put the focus on the away and the third shirt as where they can have a little bit of fun and do something different. Because in the 90s, people did it with the home shirts, but less so, I guess, in this era.
I'm wondering, is there any away shirts in that pile of good kits that you've got? Because a lot of the good talking points we have are around the traditional claret body, you know, blue sleeves, or it's a white with pinstripes, but this is divisive. I think
Dean Saunders on the back as well.
That's a lovely type. I feel like it's a lovely typeface. We've gone away from we're all kind of so homogenous now, isn't it? Yeah. It's all one. So
yeah, but I mean, even looking at extra large, surely that's not a Dean Saunders match worn shirt. So you'd fit him and Daly and Atkinson in that at the same time. But no, I mean, this is another one where, I mean, it is horrible.
If you got relegated in that, no one would. It's like the Macron yellow one. It might have been all right if we'd done well in it. Yeah. But because the only image you got is like Michael Richards arguing with fans at Wickham about it, you know, you don't rate exactly. It. But this is something else.
Well, also of the era where in the 90s, brands and clubs were more up for trying this sort of thing and going off piste, and I think fans were more up for it as well. It's a tricky one in that it doesn't really have anything to do with, you know, with the club, other than the fact that it's got a Villa badge on it. I mean, it's clearly you'd think they've taken some of the stripe inspiration from the home shirt from the 1957 FA Cup kit, and then just kind of played on that idea a bit into this. I do really like it, and I did really like it at the time because it was so different. But I think, again, it's just because at that time it was all right, it was the thing to do, whereas now I think it is fans are a lot more precious about protecting what the club should look like and what it represents. And that's part of why away and third shirts have become so important, because over the years, you know, the home shirt's the home shirt and needs to look and feel a certain way. The away, you've got a little bit of wiggle room that you can do stuff with it. And then the third shirt, you can go crazy. So you're kind of appealing to three slightly different types of fan as well, where you've got the traditionalist will always buy the home shirt. Somebody who wants something a bit different but still feels comfortably within the club would buy the away shirt, and then perhaps the teenager who might get more than one or just wants to wear something different would go for the third kit. I think as a club we did wear black and red, like way back when, before Claret and Blue, where we had, I think, black with a big red lion rampant knitted into the front of it. So there is something that would point towards that making sense. Quite where the greens come from, I've no idea. I mean, having walked into boardrooms and done presentations to CEOs and presidents, like I don't even know what I'd say about this. Just like, ta-da, hope you like it. I don't know what the story would be for this one at all, but I like it, but
bizarre one, because it's where the sponsor actually makes it, which is, for me, I feel like an absolute one-off bar Acorns with Villa, where it's a yogurt. You know what I mean? And it is like...
It is a yogurt.
It's absolutely Villa.
And quite good rice pudding as well. But yeah, no, it is. I think, well, that era was, I think it was so optimistic generally of the kind of the players that we'd got, the managers that we'd got, that were all linked in with the club as well. And I think everything was generally quite positive about the club, of like, well, we can make a difference here. We're a force in the Premier League. So a lot of this stuff is going to be dewy-eyed nostalgia, and I don't know about this thing if we'll ever look back at that and think, oh, actually it wasn't that bad. But I think perhaps some of the ones from the last few years or the next few years to come, you know, we might look back on in 20 years' time and be like, actually, that's one of the best shirts we've ever had.
I think we stick to third then. I know about alternate. Yeah. Because I know that one's the away one, but this one could be somewhat of a classic down the line. Bizarre because this got leaked and people were thinking, what is going on? You got the contrast there, I believe, map of Birmingham. You know, Sutton Coldfield probably around there somewhere. For me, I feel like it's a winner. Thankfully, because we've seen it looks so good on the pitch.
I liked it right from the outset, really. I mean, I think the fact that they have paid attention and tried to create something that feels Villa, you know, at least, like you say, there's a map of Birmingham. You can tell it wasn't designed by a blue nose because they left Birmingham city centre in the map. But, you know, I think, yeah, the Kappa had done some quite interesting camo stuff with Napoli prior to Villa joining the Kappa stable. And it was quite nice that they didn't just put a camo on it. They did something that was relevant to us. And then, you know, just the detailing around the way that they've executed the crest with the...
You love the colour
kind
change,
of yeah, well, I do. I'm not averse as much as I'm really precious about the crest. I don't mind the colour change if it's the right thing for what it's on, because, you know, you can devalue the crest by keeping it in its normal colours on the wrong shirt as well. Yeah. And so, you know, I think the execution of how they've got the detail into this silicone on the top of it, I think the sponsor is a good one in that it's nice to look at. It's a brand that we don't have to feel ashamed of. It's not a betting company or, you know, something that you've never heard of. You know, I think there's a lot to like about it. The detail down the side. I mean, yes, it's a shame that, you know, it came up a bit tight on most of the fans that wore it, but I think in terms of doing something different and pushing the boat out, I think they just did a really nice, thoughtful job on where they took this to.
Can't roll this one over and go to an absolute honker in your eyes.
Yeah, it's rubbish, this, isn't
it? You see, I know a lot of people who adore this shirt. I do like the quartered. I think the quartered for me works, but off camera, you pointed out a horrendous amount of issues with this shirt. If you want to go through them again.
Yeah, I mean, so I like the idea of it. I like the quartered thing, you know, knowing that we've, you know, got this checkerboard kind of hangover from the Randy Lerner era that I think we've perhaps don't really do that anymore. But, you know, so I think the idea of it's right, but applied onto this shirt where you've got massive side panels which functionally do a job, but in terms of then you haven't got much canvas to apply your graphic to, so it all feels dead squashed onto the front of the body. The colour, I don't know, I mean, it's pretty close to claret. What's on the collar, you've got claret and blue up through the middle here. You've got the leisure centre logo on the shoulders in another colour as well. We've got yellow for the logo there, a different yellow here. On the back, we've got, you know, yeah, albeit whoever that was must have been somebody out of the youth team. But, yeah, I mean, people said, oh, well, it was gold, but, I mean, it's not, is it? If you bought your missus a ring in that colour, like I bought you a gold ring, she wouldn't have that at all, would she? It's, you know, Karamak at best. And then even the manufacture of it, I mean, I know it's a little bit an older shirt and it's been worn, but looking at it through professional eyes, you can see like the wobbly edge all along the side of that. Something I do like about it is that they've, you know, taken the prepared and done that as what looks like being an emboss into the shirts. They've used heat to press it into the shirt, which was quite a nice detail, but, you know, by the time you get around to that, there's so much wrong with it. I mean, they say you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter, and I don't think that's even glitter, is it? We're so far gone down the turd route with this particular shirt.
So we've absolutely rinsed this one, poor shirt. Thankfully, it's got no feelings or a conscience, so it doesn't matter. The designers do, yeah. But they've moved on to better things now, unfortunately, for this shirt. But how do you make it better? I mean, there's a lot. We said there's a lot to like, but from our conversations, I'm picking up some tips here. Colorway change, color. You know, it's blending and probably, I guess, a bit more time.
Yeah, I mean, there's that much on it. They must have spent a lot of time on it. It's just not yeah, just not played out at all well. So how would you make it better? Well, I'll start again. I think really, I mean, like, it's just the basics of this just looks too constrained because
this is the shirt,
panel,
isn't it?
and it's you know, so starting from there is not a good start point, and then it just goes downhill from there. So yeah, I think it's pretty much irredeemable, this one. I think I'd pick out the quarters and try and, you could do something with it, but other than that, yeah, you're starting from scratch really. It's just, yeah, every time I pick it up, just whilst I'm talking, I spot something else about it that's awful. So yeah, just get it away from me, especially with that thing printed on the back as well. Useless.
With this shirt here, I think this was voted in, we did a big poll and it ran for about a month on what is the best Villa shirt of all time. I think we put all next up every Villa home shirt in there. This one was the winner.
Wow.
The Lou Croper shirt last season in the Championship. I think with the stuff we're going through like summer, probably it would have been a bit of a throwaway, but it's turned out to be a shirt of legend, Rob, for various reasons. Not a traditional Villa shirt.
No, I mean, I think it's another one again. I mean, it's a nice shirt. I think if I was to show it to my dad and ask him, albeit he's in his late 80s now, but you know, for him it would need to have the claret sleeves, and I think, you know, the shirt that it's nearest to is from the era when we got relegated not long after winning the European Cup, and you know, arguably our worst team over the last 40 years. So yeah, there's things that you'd look at it and say, well, yeah, typically you wouldn't think this would be people's favourite, but I think we had such a great season in it. It's not just the promotion aspect of it, but the fact that in order to get to that level, we had to win a lot of football matches, and you know, winning football matches feels nice, and so you're always going to cherish something that's got those memories for you. I think there's a lot of good stuff on it. The execution of the crest again that we've talked about and said Kappa did a good job of it. You know, I think it's really nice on here. Rather it wasn't a gambling company, but it's a fairly straight up and down sponsor that's on it. I think the fact that Luke is a big Villa fan and a local brand, again, just adds to the feeling of why people would like it. I think there's some really nice positive sentiment towards you know, towards Luke and his brand. I mean, I've never met the guy, but absolute hats off to him for what he's achieved, and you know, still seemingly staying true to his roots and looking to get involved with Villa as well. I mean, some of the details around the rib with these little thin narrow stripes, we've had that a little bit on some different kits over the years. We had striping detail on the collar of the 1982 shirt, so that's something that feels quite Villa. We've even got the one here where, you know, it perhaps speaks back to that a little bit. On the back we've got the McGregor detail and the 130 years, so I think there's a lot about it that's quite thoughtful from a design perspective, and even without the blue all the way up onto the sleeves, it still feels like a Villa shirt because it's got that certain amount of insight built into it that, you know, makes it mean something to the fans.
Do we possibly need to see more of this type of design? This can become a Villa baseline, because I feel like we don't perhaps see enough of the claret shoulders to make it Villa.
I think so. I think the way that it was done with having the blue under the arm and then on the collar, on the cuff, there's blue showing up. I mean, and it's the right blue, and I think we've got, I mean, there's two clarets on there, so you can choose which one you think is what our claret should be out of the two. But you know, I think there is a lot to like about it that would help us get a little bit of variation and still feel like a Villa kit. I mean, people talk about who the next manufacturer might be for us, and I know a lot of people are keen that it could be Adidas and with the links to Nassef Sawiris within there, but whenever I see mock-ups of a Villa kit with 3 stripes on it, it just feels like a West Ham kit. And whether that's got blue sleeves or claret like this with the sky stripes on it, it just feels like a West Ham kit. And I don't know whether that's because we've had pretty much every other manufacturer apart from Adidas. But it'd be interesting that if we did ever end up with Adidas, how that would, how that would look, you know, because how do you make it a Villa kit and not a West Ham kit? You know, if you take the badge off, what marks out that difference? And that's what we need to be striving for as a club, is to make sure that we look as unique as we actually are.
The old Acorns, the Nike one. I think this is the Europa League one as well. But yeah, the UEFA Cup, sorry. With the kind of lowercase printing. Yeah. Decent memories of this shirt. I think, you know, you haven't got the little plasticky badges. It's actually got kind of some feel to it, but that's not a Villa thing. That's a UEFA thing.
With this, and I remember at the time there was a fair bit of chat about our Nike getting our colours right. Yeah. And you know, I think especially seeing it on here amongst the gamut of other ones, you know, the answer is no. It's almost quite brown when you put it next to this. The blue feels much too saturated, especially when you put it next to. You'd like to hope that the blue on the badge is the right blue that the club specify, but it's miles off on that. So I mean, it's a really nice looking shirt, and again, some great memories of it. I think although it's very basic, the fabric is something Nike were working with at the time, where it's got a texture to hold it away from the skin, so that as you sweat it can dry a bit quicker than if the fabric clings. Yeah, with all the Nike shirts we had, regardless of the design, I felt like this was you knew what you were getting. It was almost like a branding within the textile. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, there's stuff to like about it, and you do think about Young, Milner, Barry, John Carew, Gabby. You know, there's a lot to like about it, but also, you know, the cynic in me that's been in the industry a long time thinks, well, I wonder if this is the blue that Nike used for sky blue in their like teamwear catalogues, and that's where it came from, and perhaps even the same with this colour. Did it actually get dyed to be Aston Villa colours, or was it just the closest things that they'd already got access to? Plus, weren't the Nike shirts always pretty much delivered like Easter or something, rather than being available in the summer? I can't remember if this was one, but they always seemed to be really late at the time. But yeah, proud history, bright future, and we believed that at the time as well, didn't we? Luckily, we're heading back in that direction. But yeah, I mean, visually it's a Villa shirt, but I think
almost like what's it called? Almost like a comic book Villa shirt. It kind of looks like, with the kind of oversaturated colours. And
it is. It's almost like a Pro Evo, like West Midlands Village shirt. So I kind of like it, but I think once you scratch the surface and look at it with a critical eye, there's things that you're like, yeah. I mean, even Macron's blue was better than this. And
you compare it, it's actually stark, isn't it? That's
massive difference.
The players make the shirt, but the sponsors as well. The Muller one I said was meaningful, only in a yogurt and rice pudding and, you know, filling my belly sense. But you know, you cannot argue with that as a sponsor, and it's something we lost over the years. We make youth kits, and it doesn't have Acorns on. We've lost a lot of a connection, it seems. And you know, when you see Big John Carew scoring with short sleeves and gloves in this shirt with Acorns on, it makes it.
You know, the realities of financial fair play, and we could disappear down a rabbit hole talking about whether that's really fair play or not. You know, the realities are that clubs do have to try and cover the income, you know, regardless of the fact that our owners are incredibly wealthy, and if they chose to just bankroll the club, they could. You know, they're not allowed to, and so unfortunately, gestures like this are going to be fairly thin on the ground in the future, I'd imagine, which is really sad. I think, you know, I'd love to think there would be a way to incorporate something like this more in the future, but I don't know how it would work without football shirts starting to look even more like Formula One drivers' outfits now that we've got sleeve sponsors and whatever else.
One of the later shirts, one of the Under Armour shirts, I don't know if you have it with us, but it did have the Recon sponsor underneath. Probably shouldn't say what I think of the Recon kind of branding on a camera.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that it was printed right across the arse was probably appropriate in hindsight, wasn't it?
It's good to feature this actually, because we don't have many round badge. We have obviously the remake of the 82. Really odd shirt this.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it? inspired by the fact that there was that tournament at Villa Park in that summer, and I think it was the Umbro Cup or something, and Brazil played there. So I think it's something like that was the rationale. I mean, this one here is, if ever you find one of these in Oxfam, just buy it immediately, because it's worth about 200 quid in this sort of condition. But it's an interesting, people love it, even though I think we only wore it 4 or 5 times. We got absolutely tonked live on telly the first time we wore it. And it's another one where you scratch the surface a little bit and you start to find things that are like, oh, actually that's a bit unexpected. So that Aston Villa FC has been rotated compared to where the lion is in the middle of the badge.
It stands out when you say it. You're like, oh.
Yeah, which, you know, to make it visible, presumably, which is fine, I get that. But then they've used a completely different typeface than's on there, and, you know, I don't understand that. You can see that the lion isn't actually in the middle. You've got a lot more negative space here than there, presumably because if it was in the middle, the badge would be over its head. So, you know, they've done a fair amount of compromising to try and get this right. The fabric is a jacquard again, like we've talked about before, where, you know, you've got the lions knitted into it and a little bit of something that's probably drafted off the Umbro logo itself. But yeah, I mean, I think we've got yellow in our club history. Albeit, you know, it was perhaps something you'd associate a little bit more with Arsenal than Villa for an away shirt. But I think there's still, as a colour palette, I think it works really nicely. I think the idea of it was good, and it, you know, it probably does stand up as something that is a little bit of a cult classic. Don't know if I'd pay 200 quid for it, but it's definitely something that stands out as being original for a lot of good reasons.
So we went over a lot, well, you've went over a lot of shirts and I've just been poking around at them. It's actually really delightful day, isn't it? Looking around with Villa shirts, and when you lay them all out, you can see the differences in every one. It's almost like wild to kind of consider, because when you think about it, you buy this, you go get the replica top next season, there's stark differences, and then you go through to your Lukes and your Kappas, your Umbro, the classics, the Squadron replicas. There's so much that is different about each Villa kit. You've almost got these like tyre treads on the new one. But I wanted to know what makes a Villa shirt for you. What is, you know, if you were given the job, no, do it, sort him out, what would you do with the kit?
When you get into the features like collars and stuff, I don't know if there's something that is or isn't Villa, and I think, you know, you need to vary that up all the time as well. I think for me, getting the colours right and then having the club stand by those colours would be really important. I think you could make a pretty strong argument that if you were to take the darker shade of claret off the current Kappa shirt, that's pretty much claret and blue as it should be in my eyes. You could maybe go a little bit lighter on the sky blue, but certainly compared to a lot of the stuff we've got on the table here, I think it's, you know, it's pretty close. So getting the colours right would be really important. I think making sure that it's appropriate for the players, which again Kappa have done a good job of that this season, but figuring out it's all about marginal gains really when you're operating at that level of elite performance. So what are the performance advantages we could give the players? Making sure that the replica is fit for purpose, just as the player one would be.
It's almost more important, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you could make a pretty strong case for that. And then getting into the details, making sure the badge execution's right and everything feels nice and is made properly. And then the big thing for me would be injecting that bit of insight in the way that the Luke shirt had got the little pinstripes through the collar that talk back to winning the league. Some of the other details that we've seen across the other shirts that we've looked at, even through to the more recent map of Birmingham camo. I think having something that really helps to tell a story. This club has got such a rich history that I think we need to do more to own that history and to educate the rest of the world about it. I mean, the Premier League is global now, you know. No arguments that it's as important to exist in China as it is in Birmingham. And so how do we help people get on board with with that journey. There's something about, you know, when Tom Hanks said, "Oh, I support Aston Villa because I heard the name on the TV and thought, oh, that's a really unique name." And it is, and it's something to be celebrated, and there's so much more about this club that's unique and should be celebrated. And, you know, we don't have to be, you know, we get stick from fans of other local clubs who shan't be named that, you know, oh, we're always looking in the history books and whatever else. But yeah, rightly so. We've got a lot to be proud of. If you can't be proud of your history, you can't really be proud of anything. And so, you know, I'd like to see us make a little bit more of that. So that would be something I'd look at, would be to dig out some cool little story and be like, right, this is what we're going to talk about this season, and just take the world on a journey of educating them of what Aston Villa Football Club's all about and what it's going to be now and in the future.
So if you had to put something, I guess, from a shirt to say, this is our standard that we set on the shirt now, and it's, you know, it could be like a star, it could be a design flourish. Yeah. In the Rob Warner kind of design for manual.
So I've got to make Frankenstein's Villa shirt now,
No, I mean, like, if you said what one aspect needs to feature on every Villa shirt going forward, and I mean, not the badge, not, you know, what is an aspect that absolutely has to be bang on?
Yeah, I'm sad that the star is so small. It kind of looks like you could draw a little stick into the lion's paw and it looked like he'd got some candy floss or a lollipop or something, which is a shame. I'd like to think there's a better way of including that, because the fans are still rightly proud of it, even the ones that weren't born when we won that European Cup. You know, when we won the European Cup, when you weren't allowed in it unless you'd won the league, so we were playing against the best teams of every country in Europe, not the teams that had finished fourth. You know, I'd like to see us make more of that, whatever that would look like, as one of the few clubs that's from this country, or well, across Europe, that's actually won that competition and lifted that trophy. Whatever the little detail might be that I'd look into from the history of the club, whether, you know, we had the William McGregor on the back of the Luke shirt was a really nice touch. Is there something there that would live on for us? You know, these are really important things, not just in the history of the club, but the history of the sport. You know, we own them. So I think there'd be some of those nice little things that would be, you know, they've always got to be there.
Absolutely. I think on a final note, in terms of proud history, bright future, are we hoping for that for the Villa kids? Is there? We've had a look and there's some dodginess in this pile, and outside of this pile. Have Villa done well enough with these kids?
Well, I feel like, looking back over the conversation, like I've done a bit of a hatchet job on all of them, which wasn't my intention, but I mean, I guess that's, you know, the nature of the work that I do. And so I think we've generally been all right. You know, we've been all right. We've done some. There's not really many shirts that, even the ones that I've called out as being horrible, there's, you know, some people quite like them. Yeah. So we've never done anything properly terrible, you know, not like those Puma third kits this season. Yeah. But then I'm struggling to find anything that I'd hold up and be like, that is an amazing shirt. I think there's just so much more to come in being able to achieve that and then have some classic shirts, because, you know, being all right just isn't good enough. Really, I worked with fellow Villa fan Paul Barnes, who's a typographer and graphic designer, and his collaborator Peter Saville, the graphic designer. We worked together on an England shirt, and Peter Saville said it was the one with the little crosses on it in different colours, and Peter Saville said, if I show my work to 100 people, I'd rather have 50 people love it and 50 people hate it than 100 people think it's okay, because nobody ever bought anything because it was okay. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I think the majority of these shirts, most people would say, yeah, they're all right, yeah, they're fine. That shouldn't be enough for a club like us. Being fine, being all right, being okay is not good enough. Got to take a few risks, but make ourselves stand out.
Rob, thank you very much for coming on. I just wanted to know a little bit more about Spark and the work you're doing and where people can find you if they're interested.
Yeah, so we've got a design agency called Spark now, myself and my business partner. So Craig designed the Brazil kit that won the World Cup in 2002 and has got
2 gold stars on the smart badge, haven't we?
So he's got a lot of history within football, but also within fashion, myself within football and other sports. And so we've got an agency now that works with different brands, but we've also set up Spark Design Academy, which can be found at sparkdesignacademy.com. The first 2 courses that we did were geared around football kit design, one that's more aimed towards the pros, and people that would want to do this for a living. And so thanks to our connections within different brands, because of our time in the industry, we're starting to see that some of our better graduates now are being put forward to speak to brands. We've actually got a guy meeting Hummel at some point this month that's come through the course, so that's really good. We've got a version of the course that's more geared towards collectors, so if you enjoy what you've heard today about looking at those details and how to figure out what's gone into designing your favourite shirts, that might be the right course. But then we've got more coming it's all going to be geared towards people who either aspire to have a career or already have a career within branded apparel, whether that be luxury fashion or sportswear.
Thanks very much for coming on, Rob. Up the Villa, mate.
Yeah, up the Villa. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Claret Blue and Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.